businesses feel like they don't know what the landscape is. They have too much uncertainty, too many mandates, too many taxes, too many regulations. Why is this economy not recovering? In part because of Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, EPA regulations, too much legislation, too many taxes. We've got to repeal them. Businesses got to feel free that they can hire again.
We're in a war on terror. Who are we fighting?
We're fighting radical Islamist militants and extremists, people who don't believe in the right for you to pick those who govern you, the people who don't believe in religious freedom, people who believe that our way of life is antithetical to Sharia law and their fundamentalist beliefs. We are a tolerant people. We always have been. We've always believed, as part of our Constitution and the First Amendment, that everybody has the right to worship the way they want to or not. But we will not stand by and let people, based upon their radical views, do violence to this country. And our wars have been just, our wars have been long, and our wars need to end. But I am a supporter of our military. I was on the Armed Services Committee. I believe our wars have been just, but I also know that we have paid a terrible price in loss of human life and injury to our soldiers, and that we are finishing up Iraq, and that is good. We need to finish up Afghanistan, and we need to bring our troops home.
We do need health care reform. What is your plan?
Well, we do. We have 4 million people in this state that are uninsured. Obamacare is wrong for a number of reasons. It's wrong because we can't afford it. It sets up a new entitlement program when we can't afford the programs we have. It takes $500 billion out of Medicare, health care for seniors. Medicare in and of itself in 12 years will be unable to meet its obligations to pay for health care for seniors now. And we created a new program by stealing money out of future payments for Medicare. That's wrong. Plus it taxes medicine and it taxes medical devices, which increases the cost of health care for all of us. What I would do is let insurance companies compete across state lines. I'd cut out the fraud, which I was able to pass a law that's being implemented right now that's going to save us, what one group has estimated, $20 billion a year in stopping healthcare fraud in Medicare. Medicare is pay and chase. They pay and then they chase if they don't think it was accurate. We know now that we can use some things in the private sector, like what the credit card companies do, to predict fraud before it stops and not pay when they see the fraud. We're going to apply that to Medicare and save $20 billion a year. We can do common sense things and make health care more affordable in this country and maintain that relationship between you and your doctor and not put a government official in between it.
We all know the Paul Ryan plan does not affect anyone 55 years and over with regards to Medicare. Do you endorse the Paul Ryan plan, and why or why not?
I would have voted for it. It came up in the Senate a month ago, and the reason why I would have voted for it is because the alternative is let Medicare fail. The Democrats want to let Medicare fail by doing nothing. They won't address this time bomb of a problem. They are politically afraid to address it. So if the choice is doing something or doing nothing, I vote for doing something. Now I think my plan's better. As I mentioned, I think it gets us to balance faster. And I think the way to tackle Medicare and Medicaid is to make sure that it's around for people now by having folks that are younger, under the age of 55, much like Marco Rubio has proposed for Social Security. We're going to have to work longer. You know, when Social Security was created, the life expectancy was 65. You started getting benefits at 65. It was actuarially sound then. It's not now. So for those of us under 55, we're going to have to work longer, and for those of us under 55, we're going to have to means test it. And what that means is if you're making good money when you are in retirement, you're not going to get as much of it, or you might not get any of it. But that's because we have to preserve the social safety network for everybody else and make sure seniors now get exactly what they were promised.
What do you think is the biggest problem with our economy, and what actions would you propose?
The number one problem is job-killing legislation, regulation, and taxes out of Washington, D.C. I talk to businesses every day, small, medium, and large, who will not hire people because they are just too uncertain about the landscape from Washington. And by the way, they're worried about the debt. They know what's coming. I had 2 presidents of international engineering firms in Florida tell me that their Fortune 500 clients are building facilities overseas because they are worried about the meltdown of the federal government from the debt and deficit. That means today we are losing American jobs because of concern about the debt and deficit. So I believe that job-killing regulations, taxes, and mandates like in Obamacare and others are the #1 thing we need to do to repeal them to make sure that we can get Americans back to work.
Will you sign a pledge that you will not support any form of fixed rail public transportation?
Let me tell you where I am on rail. Like the other candidates for this position that you'll hear from today, I supported high-speed rail. Now I know that that's maybe not the view you want to hear. I voted to repeal all unspent stimulus money in the United States Senate because we can't afford it. So I would have preferred all that money to go back and not be spent on rail or anything else. But the money before I got there was already allocated. And it was allocated to go to different states. And in that situation, I would rather have the money be spent in Florida than California. Now, I wouldn't have been for the rail program if the study came back here in Florida and it was something that the state of Florida would have been on the hook for and would have cost too much. But if a private company would have come in and taken up the state share and the state would have been held harmless, I would have supported it because I'd rather have the money spent here. You need to know this. The money is not going back to repeal the debt. The money is going to other states. That's the fact. I'd like it to repeal the debt. Marco Rubio's got a proposal called the Repeal Act that would say anytime a state failed or anytime a state rejected federal money, the money would go down to pay the debt. I support that. But that's not the reality. And my position has been consistent on this. Some of the other folks running for this position are now against it because they know that's what you want to hear.
What are we going to do to eliminate our dependence on foreign oil?
We've got to drill for oil in this country in places like Alaska and in the Gulf of Mexico and other places. We've got to do it safe and smart and not put it right off the beach in St. Pete so that you see an oil derrick. But we need to have more drilling in this country. We have a tremendous new find of natural gas in this country. Tremendous. And the ability to extract that natural gas at a very cheap price could change America. The federal government needs to get out of the way and allow for that. We need to build more nuclear plants. They are huge generators of baseload electricity once they're built. I support, we should be building 50 or 100 of them. We invented this technology and Jimmy Carter killed it for this country. We have 103 nuclear power plants. We haven't had a new one since the 80s. So we got to make that more streamlined and get the government in a way so that they're approved on an expeditious basis. They don't cost too much to build. I'm for renewables too, but that is not going to be enough to get us where we need to be. I like all of our long-haul trucks on natural gas. That's the T. Boone Pickett's plan. That would save us 40% of the foreign oil that we import. 40% just by doing that. We are sending hundreds of billions of dollars a year overseas to people who hate us. Venezuela, Middle East. We got to stop it. We got to bring those jobs back here.
Should there be public unions?
I think that unions have largely outlived their time, and I don't understand them in the public arena. There was a time 100 and so years ago when unions were needed, when people were being abused in the workplace, and we never want that. But in the public sector, I don't see the reason for having them anymore. These pensions we have are unaffordable. I think the only people who should have pensions are police and fire in the military. You know, first responders, people are putting themselves in harm's way. Why should some desk jockey, some bureaucrat have a pension? These were created 40 years ago when private sector folks had pensions. You don't need them to be competitive in the marketplace anymore. And we can't afford them. You know, Jim McDougald, who's right here from Pinellas, has written this book, Unsustainable, about these pensions that are going to kill us. You've got people retiring from state government with $100,000 a year payment for the rest of their life, and then this drop program, which is giving them $300,000 and $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 as a cash payment on the way out the door. It's absolutely outrageous. We got to get rid of it. State legislature did some stuff this year to have people contribute. It's only 3%. It's not enough. The governor wanted more. I think they should have done more. So we've got to stop those programs. And only the first responders and the military, to me, are the ones who should have them.
Tell us your philosophy on subsidies and earmarks.
I'm the only candidate in this race who's never requested an earmark who's held any office. Only one. And because I'm also the only candidate in this race who's held office who's never voted for a tax increase, which you should know. But let me tell you about these earmarks. They sound good. You know, folks from your community come up to Washington when I'm a senator and say, hey, we need this bridge. Hey, we need this water treatment plant. Hey, we need whatever. And they could be good projects. But the problem is that it's the gateway drug. It's the engine that drives the train of spending, and this is how it works. That budget I was telling you about for one particular piece of the government, 10 or 15%, 20% more than last year, well, you can't vote against it if your project's in it. That's how they get you. So I never asked for one, and I never will. If you send me back, I will not ask for an earmark for my career in public service, because it is the reason, part of the reason why spending is out of control.
There is a budget crunch and you have to reduce spending. Which of these agencies' budgets would you reduce? EPA, DOE, or FDA?
All of them. We're going to have to cut everything, my friends. We have to cut, and I'm going to say something that folks in this room may not want to hear, but I'm going to be honest with you and give you some straight talk. We can't spend as much money on the Defense Department. You don't think the Defense Department is inefficient and ineffective? The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, which we're about to receive at Tyndall Air Force Base, and we're happy to have that base here and to do this training. We commissioned that plane in 1995. It is $18 billion over budget. We went to the moon faster. We went to the moon cheaper. And it's not the best plane we have. So we've got these combatant commands all over the world. We've got troop stations in places that don't make as much sense, like Germany, with 30,000 plus troops. We're going to have to make cuts everywhere. And if we as Republicans, if we say, no, we're not going to touch defense, we have no credibility. We've got to touch everything. We need the world's greatest fighting force, but everything can be done more efficiently and effectively.
What is your opinion of climate change science?
Well, I think there's a debate, and there needs to be a healthy debate. This idea that some of the negative, the information that showed that it might not be happening was suppressed by the international community. I'm not a scientist. I'm not sure whether or not we're having climate change. It concerns me. I think it concerns everybody. I'm someone who lives in Florida. My house is about 1 foot above sea level. But I don't think that we can base policy off of something that we don't know the answer to. And we can't base policy off of something that may not be being caused by us. So when I look at all issues. I have to want to tell you, when someone presents me something, I don't reject it out of hand. I study it. I evaluate it. And I try to find out what's right. So I looked at the cap and trade proposal that happened in Washington from Graham and Kerry and Lieberman. I looked at it. But I talked to Tampa Electric Company. And they told me that it was going to raise rates 30%. And it was also going to send businesses overseas, because Brazil and China and India and all these other places aren't going to do it. So why would we unilaterally disarm based upon science is not clear? Didn't make sense to me. So I don't support a carbon tax, and I'm not going to be someone who's going to legislate about that issue on the environment. It doesn't make any sense to me.
What is the purpose of climate change regulations?
Well, there are those who believe that climate change is happening and they want to tax carbon to have less carbon emissions because they believe carbon emissions are causing global warming. Again, the science is not clear. And why would we hurt American businesses and raise your power rates if it's not clear? Let's do this. Let's become energy independent. Let's have more natural gas, more nuclear. Let's have all those technologies be here in this country, and then let's not rely upon foreign oil. Nuclear energy is the cleanest energy possible. Let's build 50 to 100 nuclear power plants. We can have clean air. We can have jobs. We don't have to give up a productive economy to be good about the environment. Look, we all care about the environment. We're in Florida. We wouldn't be here but for the fact that this place is beautiful. So let's not screw it up, but let's not do things that are unsound and foolish when the science isn't there and the cost is too high.
In attending county commission meetings over the past year, our members have been shocked to discover the implementation of global governance throughout all facets of our local government.